I'm shooting content and everything like that, and all of a sudden, everybody just starts pulling out their phones, and I see everybody's phone lights come on, and I'm like, what's going on? And I look, and Elon's walking in the front door, and I was just like, wow.
Welcome to the Mike Squires and Friends podcast. I'm your host, Mike Squires. Today, I am joined by my good friend, Dan Nilsen. He's an incredible photographer at some of Manhattan's most renowned nightclubs and has shot over 1,500 events. And Dan has photos of everybody. He's crossed paths with the likes of Elon Musk, Mariah Carey, Whoopi Goldberg, Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul, Kevin Hart, and so many more. Anybody that you could think of, he's got it. Not to mention pretty much every single DJ that's ever existed. And Dan and I go way back. We used to work at a nightclub together in Danbury called Tuxedo Junction. So I'm excited to talk about how he's leveled up in his career since then. Now, if you guys want to support the Mike Squires and Friends podcast, all you got to do is hit that subscribe button on YouTube or download and rate on your preferred podcast platform. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Mike Squires and Friends. What's good, Dan?
What's going on?
Dude, I'm very happy that you're here.
Oh, I'm excited.
Me and Dan go way back, if you guys don't know, which you might not know, but now you know. Dan, I want to talk to you about where you're at in your career right now, just so people get a little bit familiar. Can we talk about Marquee and Tao Group and all that right now?
So, I mean, currently I do work for Tao Group Hospitality. I do all their nightclubs and rooftop lounges, restaurants down in Manhattan. That's majority of my work right now. I've been with them for a few years, and typically every Friday and Saturday you can catch me at Marquee, which is one of the oldest standing nightclubs in Manhattan, just coming up celebrating the 20-year anniversary.
Some people may be familiar with the club, and I know it's an everyday thing for you, but can we just list some of the DJs that have been at the club that you've shot for?
Pretty much everybody in the lineup. I mean, we've had, Steve Aoki, Tiesto, Armin van Buuren, Marshmello, Laid Back Luke. I mean, anybody you can think of that's either up and coming or like an OG, really big DJ, A-lister. We have them there. And And I want to elaborate on that later, too. I have like a little segment that I want to talk about. But for now, I want to talk about some exciting achievements, too, that I know you've done. One of them is that you've had your photos featured in a Billboard. Can we talk about that and tell me that story? So I had a client at the time, and I was doing some work for them, some like lifestyle stuff. And, as it be, one client brought me another client, and I ended up doing a photo shoot at like a really nice house somewhere in Greenwich, and those pictures ended up being used for the company, posted up on a billboard, and then the other one that you're referring to was in DJ Mag. Those were photos from a show that you were also at. Yeah, dude. And that was a huge achievement to be able to see your work, because now in like a digital age, you're so used to just seeing it on Instagram or at the time on Facebook, since that's where a majority of the work was being posted back in the day. Now doesn't even really exist. But to see your work like printed out, and to know that like it's such a broad audience that's going to be able to see it all over the world that have DJ Mag, coming to their doorsteps and stuff like that, was a really cool feeling. Yeah. I mean, what is that feeling? Like, were you aware that this was happening ahead of time, or was the first time of you seeing it when you saw it? Well, I mean, I had no idea. It wasn't like planned out for those pictures to be, the one in the magazine in DJ Mag wasn't planned out. It was like I was just shooting the show as normal. And then the DJ that was performing at the time was like, I got an email, was like, hey, how much for your pictures to post them in DJ Mag? We're doing a 2-page spread, and we want like three, or I think it was 3 pictures to be in there. So I was just like, whatever, and just like named some arbitrary price, and they're like, all right, cool. And I was like, I need a copy of that, and I still have it to this day. That sits like in pristine condition at my residence. That's a beautiful thing. Were you able to see the Billboard in person too? I don't remember, to be honest. I know I have a picture. I think somebody sent me a picture of the Billboard. I don't think I saw it in person. Another thing that I know that you did, and I want to hear the story of how this came to be, because I know you put some work in to make this happen. How did you shoot Ultra? All right, so Ultra, that was a good one. So what I did for Ultra, and I could suggest this for any upcoming photographers, videographers, content creators and stuff like that. Once you have a somewhat established portfolio of some, decent A-list celebrities or DJs or artists in general, for Ultra, what I did was I'd wait for Ultra to announce their lineup, because they do their lineup phases, phase 1, phase 2, etc. And as soon as they dropped the lineup and it would show everybody in like alphabetical order and stuff like that, I went alphabetical one by one. I went onto Facebook, typed in the DJ's name, and then went into like info. And under info, a lot of these DJs had like media contact or their manager's contact or their record label's contacts listed in there. So what I did was I took every single person that I could find any related email to that DJ, and I created a kind of copy and paste email where I was like, hey, I'm going to be down shooting other artists. I'd love to work with so-and-so. Let me know if you're interested. And, obviously I didn't even have anybody booked, but you got to make it sound like you're already there. Like, hey, I'd love to work with you. I'm going to already be there. So I would send out, and I could still look up the email. I sent out like 80 emails to every single person that I could find. And then, I'd say a handful of them got back, and then I ended up landing, Vice Tone, DJ Snake, and Chami.
Yeah. What was that feeling when you locked those in, dude?
So locking it in, there's been a lot of times where like you lock something in and you think it's locked in, but it's not really locked in. Yeah. So I was like, I don't want to get my hopes up too much. But for those guys, I sent over contracts basically stating, because, at that time to get flights down to Miami to stay at a hotel, luckily I was able to stay with somebody that already had a room, so I could cut the cost and still like turn a small profit to get down there. But it was more so the experience as well as being able to have the opportunity to capture such a large thing, because prior to Ultra, I did do Moonrise. Actually, no, I'm sorry, not Moonrise. It was Camp Bisco was my first music festival. I sent over the contracts. I'm like, I need this money locked in. It doesn't matter if you can't make it. I don't care. I just need the money, because I was like, I can't take a financial loss at the time. I'm still up and coming. And, you try to mitigate as much loss as you can while still giving yourself as much opportunity as possible.
Yeah, and I think you said something that's of value too, is that nothing's happening till it's happening, because the idea of flying down there and then being like, oh, hey, we got our normal guy to fill in, like, appreciate you, is like a devastating thought.
Yeah, that actually happened while I was down there with one of the artists. So I get down there and they're like, okay, so like, come at the artist check-in at such and such time. I get there early. I'm excited. I'm waiting, and I'm like texting the person that I was in contact with regarding one of the artists, and I'm getting like no answer, and I'm like, what's going on, and everything was just like falling apart right there, and I'm like I'm here, like you signed a contract. And so one of the artists I actually didn't even shoot out of those three. I don't want to name drop anything, but one of those artists I didn't actually shoot. And the other one I got like passes from their tour manager, like literally like 10 minutes before they were getting on main stage. But luckily, I didn't have to go through any crazy stuff. After everything was, sent through, I went back and I emailed the person I was in contact with and was like, what happened? Like, we have contracts signed that like I'm getting paid, and, they held to their end. So at least I was paid, but I was stressing out the whole time and didn't even get to shoot one of the artists that I was there down for. But so, contracts are good to have. They're always not set in stone, and sometimes people will just be like, I don't care about the contract, like what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? You're talking big, you're talking big artists and you're this small fish in the pond, and you know, there's nothing you can really do but kind of hope and be like, I hope, you know, they hold to their end and I'm going to get that money. Otherwise it's going to, you know, kind of ruin this whole trip.
That's all you can do in those situations too, because I see a lot of people with like, especially like music industry, entertainment stuff. They're like, make sure you have your contract. The contract is only as good as the person who signs it, you know? And like, what do you, especially if it's like a couple $100, even like $1,000, like, that's not worth going to court for. That's not worth, like, you know what I mean? It's, you just got to keep it pushing.
Exactly. Because if they were just like, no, we're not paying you, like,
that's that.
I mean, what would I do? I'm going to, exactly what you said, you know, you're not
charge it to the game.
You're not going to go to court for a few $100s for one person. You know, obviously if you're talking larger scale production stuff where it's like $15,000 for a music video or something like that.
And it really puts somebody out, you know?
Exactly. But, you know, for at that time, and for that artist and for a single DJ set, you know, a few $100s.
But I think that's super good on them too. My bad to interrupt.
Yeah, no.
But I think it's good on them that, you know, at least they honored the contract and got you covered, even though you didn't get to shoot. But yeah, no. And it also, when things like that happen, it maintains the relationship too. Because you did go out of your way to get down there and all that. You know what I want to talk about, Dan?
What?
I want to talk about some of the travel we've done together, dude, because some people might not know that we've had a couple trips here and there.
Yeah, just a little exploring here and there.
We should talk Puerto Vallarta, dude.
Still to this day, the best sunsets I've ever seen in my life was in Puerto Vallarta.
I'm glad we got to experience that together, dude.
Yeah.
Bro, that was like, talk about a trip that like simultaneously was kind of like a vacation. Like we were down there for a way longer than we needed to be, dude. We like probably could have got all the shooting done in like a couple days.
Yeah, probably.
We were down there for like almost 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was like 12, 13 days, something like that.
Yeah, we were like riding donkeys.
The jet ski.
The jet ski.
The video that you made on the jet ski, I swear I still look at from time to time, and it's probably one of the happiest memories I have of like in my career is the video that you made of that with the music. And like, I just remember that feeling of like, it was something I always wanted to do and I got to experience it with you. And it was just like, set the scene, like sunsets going down. It's 80 something, beautiful, like riding the jet ski, tossing you off the back of it. Like,
yeah, you think of it with the significant other, but in that case, I was the significant other.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was a great time. And I remember like a specific thing about that. He was like, don't go out too far. And you sent it as far as you could go, dude.
Yeah, it was my first time on one. And I was just like, we're opening this thing up. And he's like, don't go past the little rock. And I'm like, I'm on the other side of the beach, basically, way down there.
Yeah, dude, there's a lot of fun memories from that, too. Another thing that's crazy is that we can talk about it briefly, but you were with me when my song Come Home went absolutely nuts, dude.
Yes.
Bro, that was like a life-changing moment. And like, I just remember going to my phone because at the time I didn't have like service out of the country. Only when I would like walk to like the Wi-Fi and I like left my phone plugged in. So I went back to my phone plugged in. It was just absolutely blown up. And I don't remember how I reacted to it, but I remember probably being very hype.
Yeah, I mean, I somewhat remember that as well. And I just remember singing like the lyrics, like the whole trip once that was dropping. And yeah, that was a big moment because I remember being, you know, getting back onto the boat and you're like, oh my God, like the streams and people are listening. And it was like, it was such like everything about that trip was so nice because not only did you have a big moment in your own music career and stuff like that, but it was like being there in general was such a big opportunity and like pleasure and part of the reason why I like to do photography and part of the reason why I got into it was to be able to see, you know, different parts of the world, to be able to travel and capture, you know, moments from those spaces. And there's some of those pictures that I have that aren't even related to club work. There's one in particular I remember I have of this little kid and we were walking back down to the boat and he's just holding his dog and he like looked at me and smiled. And I was like, this is such a core memory picture. And it just brings you back into those moments, like to see people, living in different places and different lifestyles and stuff like that.
I remember seeing that happen in real life. You're like, hold on one second. And I remember you went to go snap it, dude. Yeah, no, there was a lot of good memories too. And, when you get to travel with a homie, it makes it just so much better. Because,
so much better.
I've done gigs where I've traveled solo and then I have nobody to talk to about. Like, I can't go to somebody and be like, remember when this happened?
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand that, because the majority of my work now is pretty much solo, like working in the clubs and stuff like that. Like, we have videographers from here to there, but obviously it's different when it's somebody that, like, obviously me and you came up together, and then like being able to go from like us barely knowing how to operate our cameras and get like mediocre content to being like on the beaches of Mexico, like zip lining, swimming with dolphins, going to a water park that almost took you out.
Oh my God, I remember the water park, dude. Bro, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of memories from that trip. One thing that I'm thinking about right now, though, is I actually almost got in a lot of trouble on that trip from the crocodile photo. I don't know if you remember that.
I vaguely remember the crocodile. It was near the beach entrance.
Yeah, so there was a photo that you took of me taking a picture of a crocodile, and I still was pretty close, but I edited myself even closer.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I post that photo, and immediately after I post that photo, I have the Student City team or somebody who we were working with email me, and they're like, Mike, you could be sent home for this. This is a huge liability. And yeah, dude, I remember at that moment being very like, I just remember responding back. I'm like, yo, guys, it's Photoshopped, which like it was. I was Photoshopped closer, but I still was pretty close to that crocodile. And in hindsight, I think of that moment. I'm like, dude, I was dumb. Why would I do that?
Yeah, anything for the content. You know the deal.
Let's take it back even a little bit further, because we were shooting as a pair there, but we were shooting as a pair way before that gig, dude. Let's talk Tuxedo Junction, dude.
Tuxedos, huge shout out. A large part of my career I owe to Ian Bick for putting me on at Tuxedos. A little bit of luck sprinkled in with that. One day I was opening up Facebook, and I had already friended Ian because he was hosting like a teen party there, and I was photographing it for one of the DJs there. And it was like, oh, opening up this club, something along those lines. And I was just like, need a photographer, question mark? Just like throwing a dart. And then got a DM and was like, yeah, come in. And then, I remember going in there, and I was taking it very serious. And we get in there, and he's like, I like your work already. And he's like, what's your rate, this, and that. And at the time, I'm like trying to figure out, because prior to that, I hadn't really shot any big DJs. It was all more like local stuff or teen stuff. This is like the beginning stages. So, I'm kind of confused. What do I charge? I'm trying to figure out. And I just, gave a number and stuff like that. And then obviously meeting you there. And I think, without having Tuxedos, I'm not quite sure where I would be in my career at all, because being able to land just a few big artists early on in your career, when you can get, at least decent content of them, I think is so big, because it solidifies and shows others like, hey, like this guy's responsible for shooting. They don't know if I'm shooting the Chainsmokers for them at the time. They just see that I photographed the Chainsmokers, even though I was working for the club, but other people at the time or other artist managers and stuff like that don't necessarily know that connection. They're just like, oh, okay, he took these good pictures of these artists, so he's good by me. We'll hire him for something like that.
I know for me personally, I'm sure you can relate, having that cash flow early on in your career, it was able to upgrade my equipment very quickly.
Yeah, I was shooting on like very beginner Nikon D3100 or something like that. And I remember after getting a few gigs there at Tuxedos, being able to upgrade to full frame. And full frame was like
huge, dude.
Huge, because, nightlife, you need full frame sensors and stuff like that. And being able to get more than like, I was using a 35 millimeter lens, I think was like one of the only lenses I had like in the beginning, that and like an 85. So being able to upgrade your gear and get that early start of having, some sort of cash to upgrade makes a big difference. Obviously, a lot of people say like, it's not about the camera, it's about the photographer. That's definitely true. I think if you're an established photographer already, like give me any camera, I could shoot the same content through and through for the most part. But going from like entry level gear to like the more expensive lenses and the full frame cameras, like the top of the line stuff, just allows you to do even more and capture different types of content. And in nightlife, going from a crop sensor to full frame, you're able to get so much more light in, and it was just leaps and bounds. The quality and everything like that went up. So that was definitely a huge part.
Yeah, I remember early on there too, because my situation was similar. I probably was shooting on like a 7D or something when I started, and then I made my way to the 5D Mark III, which at the time, was
the pinnacle.
It was the pinnacle camera. And I just remember when I got that camera, it's also like a boost of confidence where you're like, I'm actually doing this. Like if I have this camera, that means I'm making it a little bit. Do you have a moment in your career that, you felt like this is actually happening and, this is going to be a full-time thing for me?
In my career, I've been shooting a little over a decade now, from start to currently. A moment, I couldn't pinpoint a specific moment. I think it's a few moments scattered throughout where you start to just get like a little glimpse of like, maybe I can do this, obviously landing the stuff with tuxedos and being like locked in, and there's like, hey, we're going to do these many shows, and naming all the DJs and hip hop artists that are going to be there and stuff like that. That was like definitely a key moment, because now I'm like, okay, I know that, because having a career in content creation is great and all, but it's hard to solidify it until you start making some sort of cash at least, because, it's different for somebody starting out that's a teenager, that's like 16, they don't have to worry about anything. There's no bills, there's no student loans or anything like that, and you could just focus on, creating. But as you get older, you start to struggle more, at least for myself, because you're like, I'm not making, it's not even so much the content, but it's like at some point it's like, I'm not making the money that I need to be making to sustain this as a career. And there was several times throughout my career, likewise, where you feel like you make it, you have the complete opposite feeling of, I don't think I can do this. And I've always told myself, like, just keep it pushing. And something that I've always held on to was that all it takes is one person, whether it's an artist, a manager, another photographer, a company. It takes just one person that can change the whole trajectory of your career. And for me, that was with Tuxedos, was that first point where I was like, okay, now I'm landing all these other people. And then I met a photographer there, Chris, and Chris got me a gig at one of Tao Group's properties. It was actually for a Halloween party, and this was now X amount, 5 or 6 years ago or something like that. And it's those small little connections and opportunities that can really push you to the next level. And sometimes you don't even know that it's happening. Like at the time, I'm like, oh, okay, like I get to shoot in Manhattan. Like, this is great. But you don't realize that now leads to doing other stuff in Manhattan. And then everything is just, like a snowball effect. And if you just keep pushing forward, eventually, you'll have this grand snowball. And that's kind of where you're at.
Yeah. And keeping it pushing is probably the hardest part of it too, because keeping it pushing is not just like a financial battle. It's a mental battle too.
For sure.
Have you had any like struggles or days where you're like, maybe this isn't for me? Or?
Oh, definitely. I think any sort of entrepreneur, especially creatives, whether you're photo, video, music and stuff like that, you get imposter syndrome is something that I've always dealt with on and off. So, one moment you're feeling, I'm shooting X DJ and I'm like, or we're going on trips to Mexico or the Caribbean islands doing work and stuff, and you're riding this high, and then you're not happy with your work, or you see it and you're like, or you see somebody else and you know, the comparison is the thief of joy. And I think with social media, it's such a double-edged sword because you're able to have a career because social media exists while also fighting the other edge of the sword of self-doubt or comparing yourself to other people. And a lot of the times you don't even know what those people have done to get to where they're at. You just see, you know, the end product. You wouldn't know that those people are shooting 200 shows a year while you're only shooting 20, and you're trying to compare your work to them, and they're years ahead of you. And I think that's something that I struggled obviously earlier on in my career. Now that I've been doing it for as long as I have, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, you know, work-wise and stuff in that regard. But definitely, you know, starting off, it's really hard because you're just looking constantly on social media and you're like, why don't I have that opportunity? Why can't I be as good as them? Like, so yeah, you definitely go back and forth. And I think it's important to, when you're feeling good, and like I said, that moment and that memory that we had in Mexico on the jet ski, like when you're riding the highs, just really take it in and cherish it, because you're not going to be there constantly. It's, you know, an ebb and flow, just back and forth of highs and lows, and you just got to keep pushing until you get to that next high. You know, that's life.
And it's scary, dude, because, you know, being a creative and entrepreneur, you basically just give up that safety net. You give up that security. You don't necessarily know what the next thing is, especially when you're starting out. So that's something I want to talk about. What would be some advice that you'd have for a photographer or any creative, you know, that's just getting into it and maybe is afraid to take that leap?
You know, for anybody trying to get into the scene now, I would say just get out there and shoot. Shoot as much as you can. DM, you know, Instagram is great, Twitter, anything you can to get in with local artists if you're just starting out. Find DJs that are openers for clubs. Just get your foot in the door is the most important thing, and just keep practicing, because you're not going to fully understand how to shoot in clubs and how to edit those sorts of pictures. You know, some people that shoot portraits think, oh, I like music. And then you hop into a nightclub where the lighting is completely different every second. The settings are completely different. Like, you're in massive crowds, people pushing you, shoving you, stuff like that. So for somebody starting off in this sort of career, I would say start off on the entry level. Look for any sort of club that's you know, in the vicinity you'd travel to, and look for the openers. You can't hop out the gate thinking you're going to photograph Tiesto, and then be upset when you don't even get a response. But you might be able to photograph the opener for Tiesto. And if you do good there, that might lead to something else. So my advice would be to just find any opening DJ or even hip hop artist that's opening up for the main act, and try to get in with that person, just to get your foot in the door and to get those reps. All it is reps. And it's the same with sports. Like, you go to practice, you're doing the same plays over and over and over again. So that way, when game time comes, it's just natural for you to you know, hit the ground running.
Yeah, and you made me think of two thoughts right here. One thought is when you said shooting for the opener. Now, this is kind of like a pro tip and a hack that I think has applied to both of us in our career, is that if you get a show, and as long as the main artist or whoever you're working with is cool with it, you know, reach out to the openers and shoot for them as well those nights, because that'll end up being extra money that you get for an event that you're already at.
That is certainly, I think, yes. Once you're in a career and you're shooting either for a venue or for the headlining acts to begin with, definitely reach out to the openers. I've done that before in the clubs in Manhattan, where, you know, I'm shooting for the venue, but I'm only scheduled to shoot the headlining act. And I've had openers reach out to me and they're like, hey, you know, can you shoot like an hour of my set opening up too? And I'm like, sure. And it's just one other way to, you know, make a little bit of extra cash on the side for sure.
Yeah. And the other thought that I wanted to talk about is a lot of this is how you carry yourself. And I say that because you don't want to freak out the people that you're reaching out to. And you've worked with some of the biggest artists, some of the biggest names in the industry at this point. what would you give advice-wise to like somebody who might be eager to get in the game and, how should they carry themselves in these situations?
So I would say, it's different for everybody. For me personally, I've never been the type of person to be starstruck by anybody. I think there was only one person ever thus far in my career that I was like, whoa, and that was Elon.
Yeah.
When Elon came to one of the Heidi parties last year, actually. Other than that, I've just always been like, hey, these are people too. And while you want to give them their flowers for being, successful in their own regard, at the end of the day, they're still people. And I come at it at a different angle where, when I'm meeting these A-list celebrities or models, athletes, rappers, DJs, everybody, I feel like sometimes they're so used to people coming up to them and like giving them so much attention and, being in their face and stuff like that. And now I'm being tasked with having to photograph them. I like to tackle it and let them like settle in, when they get to a venue or whatever, like, do you enjoy yourself? And then when I think that they're comfortable to have their picture taken, I'll go up and ask. So basically, I like to just treat them as I would treat you or treat somebody else or one of my other clients that's celebrating their 40th birthday. You know what I mean?
And I think that's super important in the industry because, a lot of people will definitely hire you because your work is good, but they'll keep you around because they like you as a person.
That is, I would definitely say, very, very solid advice. Everybody's work can get to a certain level and stuff like that. And, I've seen it and I'm sure I'm part of it too, where you see other people's work and you're like, maybe their work isn't the best and that's your own opinion. But it's like those people have such good relationships with the people that they're around. And that's probably one of the most important things you can do, especially in this career, because all of my work has stemmed basically from word of mouth. Nobody's just found me on Google. Nobody really found me on Facebook or Instagram and been like, hey, I found your page. I like your work. I want to hire you. It's like so-and-so recommended you. And that's been, the biggest part that I could stress is like, always treat everybody around you, especially the people that you're working for, with like the utmost like respect and always try to strive for one step further than what they're even expecting. Go a little bit further, stay up a little bit later to get the work done, spend a little extra time editing rather than just pushing it out. Communication is huge, bringing smiles, joking. A lot of the times I'm very serious when I work, when I'm just like focused on getting content and I don't have to interact with people. But when I have like private client events, and I'm getting hired to shoot private parties, 50th birthday, or mostly birthday parties and stuff like that, it's like really big to be able to communicate with the people that are hiring you and to like you want to have this relationship, because then they're not looking at you as just somebody that they found or got, somebody told them about, and they're like, hey, we'll just pay this dude to take pictures. It's like, oh yeah, like his work is great. And like, he was a pleasure to be around. Like I've gotten emails and texts back from clients that, whenever I send my work to them, I always thank them for hiring me and giving me the opportunity to capture work for them and their families. And, getting those responses back saying like, oh, you were so professional, you were a pleasure to be around. That's why I have some clients that I have for years. And this is not like big company stuff. These are like actual people that have me shoot their events and their birthdays every year and stuff like that, because you form this bond, with them and they just like to be around you. And I think if you can be an enjoyable person and be good at what you doing in your life, then that's like the true icing on the cake.
Yeah, and something I want to kind of double down on what you said is communication. I think in business, communication is the most important thing. Now, have you had any instances where something bad happened and you had to communicate that, even though you were just like, oh man, I don't want to have this conversation right now, but because you communicated it, it kind of helped the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens like here and there.
It's not often.
It's not super often, but it does happen where, you know, you're tasked with like shooting a certain event and something happens or, you know, they're like, hey, we really want this picture of this. And you know, a lot of these events, you get shot lists of like sponsors or specific guests that are going to be there that they want photographed, or specific moments and stuff like that. And a lot of the times things don't go as planned. Obviously, you know, you can plan as much as you can, but once you're in the heat of it, you know, people are grabbing you. Hey, take our picture over here, do this. And all of a sudden now you've missed this opportunity, this big picture moment, because somebody else needed you to do something else. And, you know, you start stressing out and stuff like that. So like communication is definitely important. It's good to let your clients know, like, hey, you know, I always apologize. Like, I'm sorry, I couldn't get, you know, this specific picture. You know, I was downstairs when the thing happened upstairs because so-and-so needed me down there. Like, so communicating is definitely important, you know, kind of save your butt a little bit, just so you can explain yourself.
No, it really is important too. And that's why I wanted to talk about that, because by saying that, you might have given somebody a perspective, because I find sometimes people are afraid, you know, when being afraid and not talking about it is actually more damaging than if you just, you know, stand up and take care of it.
Yeah, you definitely just got to come out and be like, hey, I'm really sorry I wasn't able to get this particular picture that they're asking. Hey, where's the picture of you and of Mike and so-and-so? And you're like, I was using the bathroom and I missed, you know, that's happened to me. One party in particular, they're like, hey, we're bringing out the cake and a sign and all this stuff. We're going to sing happy birthday. That's going to be at whatever, 7:00. I'm standing there waiting, 7:00, waiting. It's 10 after 7, 15 after 7. I'm like, oh, let me use the bathroom real quick. I'm washing my hands, hearing happy birthday, and I'm sprinting out the door, running to get to the table where they have this huge cake and sparklers and all this stuff. And luckily I was able to get like, you know, at least a decent image of that moment. But yeah, that's definitely one right there that I can recall.
I'd love to talk to you about like some of the stories behind some of your photos too. And, you know, maybe I pop them up on screen or something so people can see them. But let's just start off with the Elon Musk one, dude. I know you talked about it briefly earlier, but like, what was going on? How did that happen?
So we did the Heidi Klum Halloween. We actually just did it recently on Halloween night at Marquee. But last year we did it at one of our other venues, Saki no Hana and Silver Lining Lounge. So, you know, Heidi Halloween it's a massive Halloween party. Everybody's coming in these elaborate costumes, a lot of A-list celebrities and stuff like that. And, you know, we get like a prior list to some people that might be showing up and stuff like that. Elon's not on that list. So there's a whole step and repeat outside and everything like that. I wasn't in charge of shooting the step and repeat. We have a lot of like the New York Times, the Post, all these like huge outlets, Getty. They're all out getting that. I'm inside in the party, just photographing the party and guests inside the party. So I'm shooting content and everything like that. And all of a sudden, everybody just starts pulling out their phones. And I see everybody's phone lights come on. And I'm like, what's going on? And I look, and Elon's walking in the front door. And I was just like, wow. Because that was probably one of the only times that I can recall that I was like, because it was unannounced too. You know, everybody else that I photographed, for the most part, I know who's going to be there. I know which celebrities and stuff like that and DJs. But he came into the door and, I mean, it's Elon Musk, you know? So I'm like frantically trying to get close to him because I'm like, I need to grab a picture. And I'm like, like I said earlier, I don't normally like to shoot like what I say, like paparazzi style. I don't like to just like flash, like boom, and take pictures without them knowing that they're being photographed. But I pop off like a few shots real quick, and he heads downstairs, and I'm like trailing behind him. He gets to like the VIP section, and I'm like, okay, like back to what I said before. You know, he just showed up, let him settle in, have a drink or whatever, mingle with some people. He was actually there with his mother. And I'm like, well, I'll just let him settle in for a little bit. And then I'll ask him for like a formal picture. That way it's like the best possible picture I can get of him. And I'm waiting, and it's like a few minutes go by, and all of a sudden he leaves like the roped off area. And I'm like, oh, he's probably using the bathroom. And I'm standing there, and a few minutes go by, and I see somebody that was next to him that I think was with, you know, on his team. I'm like, hey, where'd Elon go? Is he at the bathroom? And he's like, no, he left. And I was like, oh, and I was like, there's no way. I was like, I just waited. And that's, like I said, that's also a double-edged sword. Sometimes you don't have that luxury of waiting for that perfect moment. In your mind, you might be waiting, oh, I'll get him when he comes here or when he does this, or, you know, any particular moment you have planned in your head. It doesn't always go as planned. So luckily I was able to get that picture of him, and it was in my mind, it was a mediocre picture. It wasn't the best, but it still, you know, was a picture and captured the moment of him coming in and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's something I've actually enjoyed about your photography, is that a lot of the time you have whoever it is posing. It's not just a paparazzi photo like you were saying. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I think of like posed photos, you have an incredible photo you took of Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul, and they were giving you, you know, they were working it for you, dude.
Yeah, they were characters. So they came out with their own mezcal, and they decided that, you know, they're doing like a tour, bringing their mezcal to different venues, and they were actually bartending and making the drinks for guests at the hotel. So we were at Magic Hour in Manhattan, and they come up, and, you know, Breaking Bad, one of my favorite shows of all time. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And, you know, you never know what you're going to get when you run into these celebrities, because some of them, you're like, these are just like one of the guys, you know what I mean? Those two were like one of the guys where like they're having fun, they're enjoying themselves. So that was a blast. They went around, they made drinks, we did photo ops, got to taste their mezcal and the mixed drinks that they were making, stuff like that. So that was definitely a great opportunity for sure.
Yeah. Another one that I can think of too is Whoopi Goldberg, dude. She was like really posing too for you.
Yeah, Whoopi. So I got tasked to take some photos of her birthday. And, you know, like I said previously, again, I'm speaking with her manager. You know, she arrives at the venue and I'm speaking to her team. I'm like, hey, you know, let me know when she's ready to set up to have like a nice formal picture. And eventually she's like, okay, like, Whoopi like to take the picture now. So I approach her, introduce myself, and she's like, well, you know, where should I go? And I'm like looking around and stuff like that. And she's like, what about the table over there, the bar? So it's like, you know, like a U-shaped bar. And she's like, what if I get on top of the table? And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that'd be great. So, yeah, we took that picture, and that one was probably my most like post of, I forget what year that was even in at this point, but I do remember, yeah, that was probably my most like post, because it was like just like a perfect picture. It couldn't have gone any better.
What was the story behind Post Malone? I saw you've taken a photo of him.
Yeah, so we had Post one of the New Year's. Like I said, at this point, I don't recall which year it was, because I shoot so many events yearly that everything kind of blurs all together.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had Post. He was performing, I think it was at the Barclays Center for New Year's Eve. I think it was the Barclays. And for an after party, he came to Marquee. And that was definitely, I would say, like a real pleasure, because him and his team are just like super genuine people. I love Post Malone, obviously, for his music, but him as a person, that's usually how I judge. I have a lot of people, like friends or family, are the people that might ask, like, oh, how's so-and-so? Like, how's this DJ or how's this rapper, stuff like that. And I typically judge them like after shooting a show, like how people are asking like how the show went and stuff like that. And I usually judge that answer based on A, the type of content I got, and B, like how those people treat me and the other people around. I think is huge, because there's been some people, and I'm not going to go into names, but some people that you enjoy their music or you look up to, even other content creators or something like that, and you're so excited to be around them, and then you kind of see their true colors a little bit, and it kind of ruins it for you. And I'm sure you've experienced stuff like that as well.
I definitely have, dude. And it's like heartbreaking too, because, you know, it could be an exciting moment where you're like, oh, I'm going to be working with this person today. And then you meet them and you're like, and the thing is, I always try to keep in mind, maybe I caught them on a bad day. You know, I try to keep that in mind. But yeah, there have been some instances where I'm just like, oh, how disappointing.
Yeah, it happens.
But Post was the man.
Post was definitely the man. Just happy, you know, just living life, you know, enjoying it. And I saw it in person, but you see it in every single post I've ever seen of people videotaping him, and like the way he treats his fans and the way he interacts with people. And, you know, he doesn't look at himself as like this god. Whereas other people enjoy having that God complex and feeling like they're above you. And those are the people that I'm just like, I don't mess with you anymore. Like, you ruined it for me. Like, whether you're a music or a content creator, stuff like that. You know, I definitely think that you should hold pride to yourself. And I do that as well, and feel good about myself and what I've accomplished and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong about that. But then when you go to like the next level of like ignoring people that are speaking to you because you think you're above them. Like, I've had people where I've gone up to, hey, would you mind if I grab a picture real quick? And just silence.
And you're just like, okay, well.
Yep. And then you just turn around and you're like, all right, I guess that's that. Or, you know, even other people that just give you attitude. I mean, like I said, you just keep it pushing. You try to do what you can. And, you know, not everybody's going to be the coolest person you meet.
Yeah, I'd still like to continue on the path of talking about some photos you've taken too. You've taken some photos for Shawn Mendes too.
Yeah, Shawn Mendes. So he came out with the song Summer Love or Summer of Love, if I'm recalling correctly. And so we had a thing where he wanted to go to I think it was 4 of Tao Group's clubs in Manhattan. And this is unannounced. So people are just enjoying their night out at the club, having a great time and stuff. And then all of a sudden the DJ hops on. They're like, we'd like to bring out a special guest. And it's like Shawn Mendes. And he comes out and he starts singing his song. And people are losing it from every single club that we went to. Lavo, Marquee, PhD. And people are just losing their minds. So like, being able to experience that was definitely another good memory for me. Part of the reason why, obviously, aside from the music and the just purely artistic side of photography, I just enjoy being around people that are enjoying themselves. So being in a club environment, you're rarely, especially in EDM music, you know, you're rarely finding people that are there being like, ugh, I'm having a terrible time. Like, no, like when you think EDM music, you're thinking people jumping, screaming, like emotions, just like happiness. And I'm like, I want to be a part of that, you know, whether it's being the DJ or being part of the stage design or owning the company that's throwing the events or something. Like, I just wanted to get close to that because it's something I really enjoy, being around people that are, you know, having the time of their lives, because it makes you feel good about yourself too in the moment.
And I feel like you've been around a lot of people that look like they enjoy their life to the fullest. I know that you've also shot for Kevin Hart, dude.
Yeah, Kevin, it was for another tequila. And so he came in and, you know, came into the club. Everybody's having a good time. He pops up, he gets on the mic. He starts saying, he's like, I want to thank everybody trying my tequila. He starts dishing out bottles to everybody. And it was just like a very cool moment. And the picture I got of him, I thought, like, you know, sometimes you get that content. Sometimes you're just like, but like when you get like that picture And it doesn't happen every shoot that I shoot for every event that I shoot. You don't always get that like aha moment, but when you get that picture, whether if it's a person or like the concert as a whole, that's like that tiny little like dopamine hit that just keep pushing. You feel good. Like, when, for me personally, when I get that picture and like the one day you're speaking of Kevin Hart, and the lighting and everything was perfect, and his smile, and it was just like, this is just perfect. And I'm like, keep it pushing. Now on to the next one,
Yeah, no, it is exciting. I saw another photo that got me excited, but I'm worried that a younger generation is not going to know this person other than the reference in the Maroon 5 song, dude. You shot for Mick Jagger too, dude.
Oh, yes, Mick. That was nerve-wracking a little bit. Not so much. I just didn't know, because now you're talking, you have some A-list DJs or rappers and stuff like that, but like you're talking Mick Jagger's, like, he's at the legendary status. He's been getting praise and all this stuff for decades at this point. So being able to photograph him, he was actually a lot cooler than I anticipated, in the sense that he was very down to earth. He was happy. I was showing him and his girlfriend the pictures I took of them, and they're like, oh, like, how do I look so good? Like, joking around, having a good time. So that was definitely a cool moment for sure. And especially for like my parents that listen to his music, it was like, they're like, oh, I know who that is. A lot of times they don't know the DJs that I shoot, but seeing Mick was like, a huge thing.
But I love to hear that, dude, especially when you have someone who's like at his level that is still down to give you your props as a photographer, and make you feel good about your craft,
Yeah, that's definitely a great feeling. And I'm sure you know that as well, shooting music videos and stuff like that. Because you're looking at these people, and obviously these people are DJs or musicians or stuff like that. So they don't necessarily know the skill behind taking great pictures or making great video content and stuff like that, but they can appreciate it as an artist themselves. So being able to hear that, makes you feel good, because there's been times too where I'll take a picture of somebody, or even an event as a whole at the club, and I'm like, I have very high standards for my content, and sometimes I don't feel the best about what I'm delivering. And I'm like, oh, here it is. Like, I hope you love it. And then you get back like this message like, oh my God, these are the best pictures ever. Like, I had that happen to me. I think it was yesterday. One of the DJs that I photographed sent a picture and was like, this is my new favorite picture ever of me, performing at this venue. And, I wasn't necessarily like, wow, this is the money shot, but like, for other people, that's the money shot for them. So when you hear that satisfaction in their voice telling you that you're doing amazing work, that definitely helps you. Like I said, everything's about just keep pushing. So those little small moments really help you just keep it going.
Yeah, and it's rewarding too, because you have people that have dealt with a million different photographers, and they probably don't say that to every single photographer.
Definitely. To speak on that as well, recently at one of my events, I actually had a different club owner come up to me and was saying like, hey, the pictures you took at my venue are some of the best pictures we have. And I haven't worked with that venue in a while now, but he's saying like, we need you. I need you back in here. And he's like, what do you make now? And I tell him, and he's like, I'll double that to have you come in to shoot at my club. And it's not even, it wasn't even like in the moment about the money being like, wow, I could make, twice as much for a single night working at this venue. Like, obviously that's great, but I was so thankful and thanked him in the moment and the following day for recognizing like quality content. And because like you said, there's so many people that are creating content now. Obviously when you and I started, I could only name a handful, and those people are still creating. And in my eyes, they're still some of the best people in the industry. But now there's so many people, and that's great. I think it's great that people are able to, cameras and stuff might be cheaper, or you can buy used gear, and the technology and editing is made stuff so that like you don't need the best camera necessarily, because you can edit so much stronger now that you can get away with having a more entry-level camera or gear. But hearing somebody give you props and tell you like, we've had other people, but like your work stands out, and that person's not a content creator themselves. That's somebody that's looking as a business transaction and giving you the props and being able to like really understand that like I need to have the best looking content for my venue, and I don't want anything less. You know what I mean? So it made me happy that they at least recognize the importance of not just throwing out like mediocre content just because they want it. You know what I mean? Sometimes I get mixed up where it's like you want to be, content is king. You want to be pushing out content constantly. But if you have the opportunity to be able to create high quality content, and maybe it costs a little bit more, or maybe you have to make a little bit more accommodations for people and stuff like that, I think that's super important.
Yeah, and I think quality is important because in a world where people are just consuming things like so quickly, though, it's like you want to be able to stand out. Mm-hmm. And if you don't stand out, it's just going to get blurred in with everybody else.
Yeah, I think it's definitely I think at this point now with TikTok coming up and people's attention spans going down, I think it's definitely important to have a good, happy medium of having good content while also not harping on it being perfect. Because there's been times, and I still do it to this day, where I'm editing and I'm looking at this one picture for 10 minutes because I'm like, something's off. The perspective or the lines aren't perfectly even, and I'm trying to make this picture perfect. Meanwhile, it's going to be looked at for 3 seconds and then scrolled past. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's hard because that's just where we are in today's attention span, and that's how media is consumed today, very fast, rapid pace. That's why I find myself enjoying podcasts such as like yours and other content creators, because I like being able to take a break from the constant consuming, fast video scrolling a feed. It's just like constant. And I like throwing on a podcast when I'm driving into Manhattan or while I'm sitting at a 4-hour editing session, editing pictures, and I could put on a podcast in the background and get a little bit more out of just brainless content.
And speaking of content, I want to run it back to some of the photos you've taken too, because I got a few more I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. But one of the content kings, Gary V, you've got some photos of Gary, dude.
Yeah, I've have had the opportunity of meeting Gary, I think at this point, like 2 or 3 times. The first time photographing him, I was consuming his content a lot because I think he provided so much value and still does to this day. And being able to see him, the first time I met him and took a picture with him and photographed him, he was with Le'Veon Bell, a Jets player, and he was in the club, and I got to meet D-Rock and the rest of his team too that were just out at the nightclub at that time.
And then another person too, you shot for the Weeknd, dude.
That was a crazy event. So we hosted at Tao Downtown the Weeknd's birthday party. And they transformed, now Tao Downtown, if you've never been, is like this massive restaurant in Manhattan. And they transformed the whole thing to fit this theme for the party. And they had like part of a tank inside the building, and it was like all army themed and stuff like that. He has the largest security guards I've ever seen in my life. These guys were just massive human beings. And I know I'm just trying to get pictures. I'm like, I'm supposed to be there.
And just for the record, Dan is like 6'4". Dan's 6'4". So if Dan is saying someone is massive, you got to imagine that.
No, these are large human beings. And you have to kind of work around those people because like, obviously you're supposed to be there and you're you're trying to get the content. You need to make sure you get that picture when they're bringing out his birthday cake or when he's hugging his girlfriend at the time or stuff like that, those key moments. And then you just have these huge people that are looking at you like if you step 3 more inches forward, you're going to get laid out. Like you need to stay away. So I think that's super important and definitely a good tip for anybody that's working in nightclubs and music events and stuff like that. Befriend the security guards, whether it's the personal security of the artist or people working the stage or the pit at a festival or something like that. Always say hello, be kind to the people, ask them how they're doing, because you're there stressing your job, making sure you're getting that content, and they're there stressing their job, making sure that they're keeping their artists safe and the venue as a whole secure and stuff like that. So I always make it a point to like acknowledge people that are working the events rather than just focusing directly with the artist or the artist manager and stuff like that. That when you see the security guards, like at the clubs that I work at, I always say, what's up? Give them a fist bump, a high five, handshake, stuff like that. Our stage manager, our lighting guys, I think it's definitely important to always show appreciation to everybody that's throwing the event, because it's not just the artist stepping on stage. It's everybody coming together to make that event be as good as it can be.
I learned something huge from you in that same regard, is that if they want them, you should take photos for the entire crew. That's something that I think has done me well over the years, where it's like, if the artist has like a full band, make sure you're getting shots of the drummer, the guitarist, even the tour manager too, because that goes a long way.
Yeah, it definitely goes a long way. I've definitely take pictures in the past of managers, tour managers, in the booth with their artist or before they go up on stage for a music festival, capturing those candids of them, like interacting and stuff like that. And that brings it back to forming that relationship with the person rather than just being somebody that can, produce content. It's forming that relationship of like, wow, he got this beautiful picture of me and my artist, me as being the manager. And like, that's something that they remember. And if you can create moments like that where somebody feels really special about the picture, then that's how you get those repeat clients. And I think that's definitely a big key to success, is just capturing, whether, if it's in live music and stuff like that, or you're doing family portraits or newborn content, and you get those pictures and you make that person, your client, feel that feeling of like in awe with the picture, and you'll have that person for forever.
You got some photos with Teezo Touchdown.
Yeah, Teezo. So we had an album listening party, and he was one of the artists that was there. I personally didn't know who he was. I just seen this guy with all these nails in his hair, and he's got football pads on, and I'm like, I don't know who that is, but he looks like he's important. He looks like somebody that's an artist or something like that. And for me, that happens a lot where, especially with like hip hop artists and stuff like that, or even actors and other just regular celebrities, anybody that's not a DJ, basically. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't know who they are, or like I do, but I don't recognize them. And I'm just like, you use like your best judgment. I'm like, hey, this person's dressed really nice and has chains or something like that. Like that's gotta be an artist. So like, that's something that I use.
Yeah, no, that's good though too, because it's impossible to know everybody too. So, how do you use your judgment you're like, hey, should I get a photo of this person?
I'll definitely have asked people like straight on the spot, not the person themselves, but just a random stranger that happens to be in vicinity of that person. Like, what's that guy's name again with the nails in the hair, like something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's an artist. Yeah. He's an artist. And you're like, oh, okay. So like, I need to do that. Cause like I said, yeah, there's so many people, and especially at these events, a good majority of everybody is a somebody. So you kind of I sometimes at those events just photograph as many people as I can. And I'm like, here you go. Like, hope I got everything that you wanted. So that's kind of how I tackle that.
No, it's good to know too. And I want to bring it back to an earlier photo, Dan. A$AP Rocky.
That's a throwback. A$AP Rocky. That was at Ferg's album release party. I think it was Trap Lord, something Trap. His album release party. That was in Brooklyn. And I got that event from a guy that was co-hosting the party itself. And that was probably one of the craziest events I photographed. Not because of the production or anything like that, but because the venue was so over capacity. And then the whole A$AP mob shows up. And I'm standing in like the pit right in front of them in the stage. And we have security and gates and stuff like that. Those guys got on the stage and they just start stage diving over me. Like, I'm holding my camera up. I'm trying not to get hurt. The crowd's pushing over the barricade, like stampeding. I'm stuck in like one spot trying to get like these pictures and stuff like that. Definitely a wild memory for sure.
Well, thinking about all those people I just listed, Dan, that's absolutely insane. And to be honest, I don't even think we scratched the surface.
We could be here for hours. But
yeah, but I mean, you got to be feeling some type of like, are you feeling proud about what you've accomplished? Like, how do you feel about everything that you've accomplished, man?
Like I said before, it's always a back and forth. And because I shoot so much content, a lot of it, I feel like blends into one another. So it's hard to have key moments that stand out because I do very similar stuff on a weekly basis. What I like to do from time to time is open up my Instagram and I'll just scroll down my feed. And because a lot of times on Instagram, like, I shoot way more than what I post on there. I don't post like a quarter of what I shoot. But I usually post on there the stuff that I'm proud of or stuff that I haven't already photographed, people or locations and stuff like that. So sometimes I'll go down on my feed and you start scrolling through your content of, years past. And it kind of reminds you of like, wow, like not only do you see like your recent work that like I feel good about, you start scrolling further and further and you start to see your old work. And you can see the comparison of what you used to be able to produce and how, in my eyes, mediocre it was now in comparison to what I can do now. But at the time, you're feeling like that's like, this is amazing. So that's basically, in terms of accomplishments, it's always like, I always feel like you're as good as your last shoot. Sometimes to a certain extent, and I just keep pushing for that next hit of feeling proud or accomplished with the content that I produce.
So Dan, if someone wanted to hire you, work with you, where could they find you?
I would say just open up my Instagram. It's Dan Nilsen Photography. My email's linked on there. I have a website on there. I haven't really updated that in a hot minute, as most content creators fail to update their portfolios. But yeah, my Instagram's on there with my email. And just send me an email and introduce yourself, what you're looking, what type of content, what sort of event, and the date, and we'll see if we can make it happen.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, Dan. I'm excited. I hope you get you've already got some of the most fire people that you're working with, but yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on the pod, dude.
I appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's a good episode. And, it's good to it's fun that the Mike Squires and Friends podcast is legitimately all of my friends. But yeah, man, that's a wrap. I want to share with you guys my final thought of the day. Whether you're a photographer, a creator, or entrepreneur, that your dreams are possible. Sometimes you just need to take the steps to make it happen. I know that might not be easy, but the key is just to start. Study some of the people that are in your career field. See what they're doing and how they're making it work. Don't be afraid to reach out. But the most important thing is that you believe in yourself before the world does.